and welcome to the Healthtech Pitching Podcast, where we take a deep dive into the week's best health tech news so you don't have to. Today, I am absolutely delighted to be joined by my colleague Amy from SomX and a returner to the Pigeon Podcast, Henry from Health. Henry, Amy, how have your weeks been?
I've had a good week, can't complain, and today I've got a lunch with Bill Bailey, so I'm quite excited for that as a nice ender to the week. How about you, Henry?
A one-to-one lunch with Bill Bailey.
Well, well, it's a private party, it's a private birthday, and I'm being sat next to Bill Bailey, apparently.
This is
So-
amazing. Let's not talk about health tech at all today. Let's talk about Bill Bailey.
I
Works for us.
know. Yeah,
fine.
Can update. Can update post lunch. Maybe we should have done this after lunch.
Yeah, that'd be great. I've got time, so
Stay around for a couple of hours. Amy will update after lunch.
sold.
Maybe I'll invite Bill Bailey onto the podcast next time.
I reckon he could fill the time. I think it'd be great.
I think he could.
Nice. Well, that doesn't take away from today's guest, Henry. How's your week? I mean, 1 month to Health Europe now, right? Less than.
31 days, I think, roughly. Good. It's the busiest time, but it's also the most exciting because it's when you have these like very natural lulls in the cycle of running an event. 2 months after Health Europe, nobody wants to talk to me at all, and that is fine. July, August, great. And then you see these little spikes of interest when you launch the agenda or the first 100 speakers or first 300 sponsors, whatever it is. And then from about 6 weeks out to the event, every day is a spike, which is actually really exciting. The adrenaline is incredible, and that's really, well, it can be challenging, but it's also super exciting to see how much everyone's rooting for it this year, which is great. Last year we didn't exist. We existed in sort of 5 of us going around the world telling people it was going to be amazing. This year people have seen it once, they want to see it again, or they've heard about it once and they have got their own interpretations of what it is. So yeah, we're excited. There's a lot going on, and it is terrifyingly close.
What are you doing differently this year? What are you doing the same? What have you learned from year one?
Quite a lot. I think there's a lot of feedback that comes through, and you have to be able to kind of disseminate through the noise. Like, we are pan healthcare, so everyone has an opinion on what you should do differently. And I think we have to take a call on saying, okay, our audience knows well what they want, but we also know how we want this show to impact the sector. So there's a lot of changes this year towards providers, essentially. So we will treble the number of provider leaders on site, which is nuts. Well over 1,000 of them, which is very, very exciting. There's a lot more around hospitals, both in terms of content. We're also building like a provider stage with a load of CEOs from across Europe speaking on it, and CCIOs and things. We've got a provider village. The parties have had a refresh, a reformat. The floor plan is quite different. The stages, I saw the stage designs for the first time 2 weeks ago, and they look incredible. And the speakers that we've got on them are brilliant. So the soul of it, the heart of it, is very much the same. It is still always going to be sort of the biggest, most bombastic health tech innovation event in Europe. But we've made some tweaks, and hopefully they work. And if they don't, we will retweak them. It will never be perfect. We will never get it right. And so no one ever does. But hopefully what we've done, what we've changed, people will appreciate and enjoy.
Excited to see it. Excited to see everything coming out of it as well. Obviously, the only question on my mind that is left unsaid is which band will be playing the final night.
So I have such a big gob that I'm no longer allowed to know certain things. So as far as I know, I mean, no one's even whispered a band name to me. It's super challenging when you've got an audience that's like 20% UK, 20% Scandinavian, 20% American, 20% Dutch, to find an artist who sort of covers all of those markets, with the exception of like giant global megastars and the Venga boys, who seem to be incredibly popular everywhere except for in places where people have ears. So I don't know. It may be that we take what we would spend on a band and we just do a giant party instead, a different party. I don't know. I'm anything that is secretive that marketing want to make a big song and dance about at some point in order to boost interest in the event. I am now not allowed to know, because I will come on a podcast and be like, oh my God, it's going to be Dua Lipa. It's not going to be Dua Lipa, that would be mental. But I will come on to a podcast and just say who it is. And then they'll be like, great, thank you for ruining the surprise. So,
well, I look forward to Sunday when your marketing team listens to the podcast and say, damn it, he revealed Dua Lipa was playing. Like, that was our big trump card.
I kid you not, about 20 minutes ago, our marketing lead, who is on holiday at the moment, sent me a message saying, let me read it. If you reveal anything on that podcast, I'm going to wring your neck. She's on holiday.
She knows you. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, she's working.
She knows.
All right. Well, I want to chat a bit more about it later, but I'm going to start with some stories, and let's chat to, I think, some of the more interesting stories that we've had on. So, if everyone's ready, let's go ahead. So our first story today comes to us from Tech Funding News, and that is the new Finland, how Portugal has become a hub for health tech innovation. It's an interesting piece that explains just how far Portugal appears to have come as a tech hub, but also a health tech hub after one of the second biggest event outside Web Summit for tech is now hosted in Portugal. Investment levels soared in 2000. So I'll do that again. Investment levels soared in 2020 to 2021. Have evened out a bit more, but it seems like it's a really important place for early stage health tech innovation and investment. So there's a lot of potential reasons, a new startup law, various elements of a supporting environment for health tech and startup investment. But what's this telling us? What's interesting about this, Henry? You've had a chance to have a little look at this. What's grabbing you for health tech in Portugal, and what else are you seeing in investment in health tech generally?
I think the one of the most interesting bits of that article is around the funding landscape in Portugal, and it talks about how limited local VC is, and that a lot of the funding that is coming in is from other European sources. So that speaks very highly of the quality of innovation that's coming out of Portugal. We've seen a lot of different organizations at Health Europe this year coming to us, particularly individuals coming to us from Portugal, and that's very exciting. We've got really good delegation from CUF, which is like the biggest hospital in Portugal. Let me start that again. I hope TJ's really good editing, because that was gibberish. I think that there's a lot of good. Bye, TJ. Sorry, now I'm just wasting your time. And again, I'm still doing that. Sorry. Need more sleep. Less event, more sleep. Right. It's a really interesting time. Portugal has an incredibly high quality of life. One of the weird things that came out of doing the research around this, or reading around this, was that one of the things that is attracting people to work in Portugal is the quality of life that you get there, and that gives you, you could sit in the rain in Bank in London and crunch some data, or you can sit by the sea and have a pastel donata and crunch some data. That's a terrible rhyme, but we're going to go with it. The most interesting thing in there, though, was not around quality of life and not what attracts people. I think it was around the fact that Portugal's funding landscape is, in terms of VC, very limited. So I thought it was quite interesting to see that it's other European VCs going in, and that speaks to the quality of innovation that is coming out of Portugal at the moment. It doesn't mention it in the article, but you've got organisations like Startup Portugal working there, and we've seen in the UK with like the Innovation Accelerator and the work Jack and Mindy do there, or over in Healthtech Hub Copenhagen, Jesper and Annette and people like that. These small kind of ecosystem community building pieces are incredibly important for growing local ecosystems. So the fact that there's not a lot of VC there, but these companies are still growing, it's a testament, as I said, to the quality of companies they're producing.
Do you think more VCs might end up kind of emerging from Portugal, given that there's funding going into it? Or do you think it will always come from the outside?
That's a really good question. I have no idea. Anything I say to that as an answer will be made up gibberish, but I'm happy to have a pop. Yes, Amy, I do think that.
We don't have to answer it right now, but I just suddenly
it's a really
thought.
Good question. It would be really interesting to do, if you are a VC or a consultant of some sort with a spare 40 hours. It would be really interesting to see the financial flows from different sectors, different countries into other countries. So to look at like how many of Albion VC's portfolio companies exist are headquartered in Europe, other European countries. And obviously all of the VCs will have their own investment theses, and they may only invest in UK companies or only invest in French companies. But it would be very interesting to see over time where the flow of money is going. I think that's probably something that someone out there's probably got that data set. I'd like to see it, because then you could say, well, is there any need for the Portuguese VC side to grow if European VCs are happy to go and work there?
Yeah, interesting. Maybe someone else has that data out there and they can let us know.
If you do, please get in touch.
With Pigeon.
With Pigeon.
Of course,
exclusive.
Yeah, not with me. Yeah. I want it.
Henry will tell everyone, so don't tell Henry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, don't tell me anything.
It's really exciting to see the nods to like why it's being so successful for Healthtech as well. Like what is it that is the quality of innovation, but also the like impact on that side too. So things like Portugal providing a really interesting venue for local validation and real-world validation of these technologies. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm sort of seeing that pop up so often now as like the big thing holding back scale at the moment. I guess you've probably got something on the agenda about that this year at Health, Henry. I'd love to get your thoughts on what you're looking at on that space.
Not a Portuguese specific one,
no,
but that would be very niche content for us. There's a lot around scaling. There's a huge amount around validation. It's a very packed agenda this year, and it feels like I wrote it forever ago. It was only 9 months ago. But yes, there are pieces around validation, around a lot around barriers to scale, and in particular how to scale in different nationalities. That doesn't make any sense. How to scale in different countries. So lots of things on the health agenda, if that's what you're looking for. The other bit that I thought was quite interesting in this is how much more diverse Portugal's scientific community and startups are. So they're talking about 2023, women founded 22% of startups in Portugal, not just healthcare ones. That figure in the UK is significantly lower than that. And I think the European average is lower than that. And then women constitute 51% of Portugal's scientific community, which is one of the EU's highest proportions. And again, it's higher than the UK. So it's very encouraging to see that the sector is flourishing and also promoting diversity at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, that's completely off the charts, isn't it? 51% in the scientific community, like women representation in STEM is appalling across Europe in a lot of places. So
interestingly, I was in Lisbon in March. I went to get some sun, and it rained the whole time, unfortunately. But I felt, and this is not data led. This is purely my own observation. But I felt like it was a really inclusive place for women generally, and I met a lot of young women, really bright young women there, and it felt like a really, I don't know, a great place where lots of like creative minds and entrepreneurs. And I know a lot of my friends from the UK are kind of flocking to Portugal as well. So it does seem like there's quite a spotlight generally on like entrepreneurship and attraction to Portugal and Lisbon at the moment, which potentially is feeding into some of this economic development in more niche areas like health tech. But yeah, it was cool to see that. I myself was quite motivated to potentially move there or spend some time there at least.
Was this when you pan your camera around and you're just at the beach? We're all like, oh, right, okay, fair.
Not quite. I'm in my parents' attic at the moment, so less exotic. But one day, maybe on the next pigeon.
A very interesting final piece from this, with a headline, the new Finland, how Portugal has become a hub for health tech innovation. The article does conclude by asking the question, is Portugal the new Finland? And says not yet. Not yet. So what do we need to see for it to become Finland, really? Well, that's a nebulous question, but
I mean, Portugal and Finland are two of my favourite countries in Europe. Helsinki is my favourite European city. But I was slightly confused by the phrase, like the premise of the article. Like Finland obviously has an amazing startup scene and punches well above its weight when you look at like international startups and the amount of funding that they raise compared to the size of the population. But it's a really weird way of phrasing it, in my humble opinion. Is it the new Finland? Because you'd need to have a reasonably good knowledge of how well Finland overperforms in order to, otherwise it's just like, well, no, it's Portugal, it's not Finland. So what does it need to do to become the new Finland? Everyone in Finland needs to move there. No, I don't know what it needs to do to become the new Finland. I don't think ecosystems should necessarily be looking to constantly replicate one another, but instead focus on the things that make that individual country appealing to build a company in. So what it is in Finland with like, you know, events that they've got running there, or some of the they do a lot of like cross-sector, what's the word I'm looking for, cross-sector collaboration. Finland has a very joined up strategic approach to this. Does Portugal need to emulate that? Not necessarily. They can do their own thing and focus on what makes Portugal a great place to build a business, rather than trying to do the same thing that's been happening in Helsinki.
I don't think I could have said it better myself, really. I think I'd prefer the weather in Portugal. Although I don't know about the weather in Finland.
Oh, there's 6 weeks of the year where Helsinki is the greatest place on earth, because it's going to be dark for a lot of the year, right? So for 6 weeks in the summer, it's incredible.
There we go. I'll go for those 6 weeks.
Please, yeah, if you could, that'd be great.
in Portugal for the other 46 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Is this how you guys are so efficient? You've got an extra 2 weeks a year. That's cheating.
Yeah.
That's not okay.
On that bombshell, on to the next one. Our second story comes to us from Next Shark, and that is that Mark Zuckerberg wants you to have more friends, but they need to be AI. So apparently Mark Zuckerberg is out on the podcast trail promoting his vision of artificial intelligence companions as a solution to the US loneliness epidemic, claiming the average American has fewer than 3 friends but desires meaningfully more. I think it's safe to say that this is a part of his attempts to convince us all that putting AI in various forms is going to really actually improve us, and it comes to us from a healthy and well-being angle. I, for one, have noticed that my WhatsApp now has a chatbot that I can just talk to in, and I mean, I ignore my WhatsApp for most things anyway, so I don't know why I'd want to start talking to a chatbot. But Amy, Henry, let's get your views. I'm really interested to see whether you think this is the answer to loneliness.
I mean, I'm going to say at this point that my views are my own and not representative of any organisation I may or may not work for. I think that the sentence "Mark Zuckerberg wants" and then XYZ is generally speaking always going to be something I don't want. It's about as enjoyable a sentence to me as the sentence "Stephen Bartlett endorses XYZ." Like if Zuckerberg wants it or Stephen Bartlett is trying to plug it, I'm good. I've seen quite a lot of these podcasts. And you actually said, Huw, there, that you thought this was part of. Should we call him the Zuck? It's much more enjoyable that way.
Yeah.
The Zucks, doing the podcast trail to convince us that AI is useful in all sorts of applications. And I thought you were going to say he's doing the podcast trail to convince us that he's human, because he comes across like when you. I mean, Amy, you're going to lunch with Bill Bailey later on, so you clearly go to some banging dinner parties. But when you get stuck at a dinner party, and maybe this is just. People wanting to just rile me, but you get stuck at a dinner party with someone who's like, so everyone in power is a lizard, and you're like, okay, well, this is insane. And then you watch Mark Zuckerberg being interviewed, and you go, I don't know, like, what? Lizard people, maybe. Just to be clear, that's obviously a joke. Mark Zuckerberg wants us to have AI friends. Let's do it. 'Let's 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 I'm not particularly lonely, lucky me, but I looked at the campaign to end loneliness stats, so the UK thing this morning, and 49% of people report feeling lonely some of the time, 7% all of the time. That is a huge number of people. If I wanted to go like full Middle England about that, it also costs the economy about £2.5 billion a year in terms of well-being, health, and work productivity. So it is both an international, I suppose, tragedy that we have got to a point as multiple societies that loneliness is so endemic. But it is also economically not particularly viable, and that sounds very, very cold. And maybe I will join Zuck in his lizardiness and that. But it is a big, big problem, and if AI can assist with that, then that is a net benefit. How we go about that is as important, if not more important, than going about it. I think it has to be done with a huge amount of care and a huge amount of thought. You can't just chuck chatbots at people and be like, cool, you now have extra friends. So when it says like the average American has fewer than 3 friends, also, can we stop doing this in comms? Fewer than 3 is 2. It either rounds up to 3 or it rounds down to 2. You either have 2 friends or you have 3 friends. Look, like, ugh. I saw something the other
Or
day
should
on
it be
someone's
3 or
comms.
fewer?
3 or fewer is nice. I saw something on someone's comms the other day that said we're working with over 6 NHS trusts, and I was like, "Do you mean 7?
7.
Because it's clearly not 12, or you'd say 12." Anyway, so Mark Zuckerberg has 2 friends, and he wants to replace the rest of them with AI, and that's fine. But I think that there is a lot more thought that needs to go into something that is, as I say, a massive international tragedy, that we've created a society that is so siloed and segmented that we're now getting to a point where we go, rather than trying to ensure that there is better human connection amongst people. And there are lots of things that go into this, neurodivergence, all sorts of things, that we've decided that chatbots, AI, is the answer to it. Something about that feels uncomfortable.
I mean, for me, it also raises like a really simple challenge, which is it's the line in the article is Zuckerberg believes AI will transform social interactions with chatbots functioning as friends, therapists, and business agents. And I think ultimately we've already seen this a lot as well, and it's about that care piece, and it's about that differentiation between those things as well, because we see people asking ChatGPT for mental health advice and talking to it as if it's a therapist, and it's not designed for it. It's not built for it. It's not. I think it is hard to differentiate between those things. If we see, yeah, I'd predict it's really hard for the average person on the street to tell you the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist. Like those are two actual mental health roles that have very different outputs and outcomes, and very different roles in clinical pathways as well. So when we use chatbots as a solution to loneliness and they have very different roles in your life, is it super easy to differentiate between them? Because we see people aren't. There are clinical chatbots that provide a therapy element. There are AI chatbots that provide a service or a support use for you. Are we doing enough to differentiate between those things?
It's this article raises so many questions. When I was reading it, I obviously all of those things you just mentioned about, you know, deciphering those kind of technologies, but also what this means on a greater scale of, you know, can AI replace a human connection? It might be in the moment that it does, but there's an interesting line here that says around growing evidence that social media and the decline of in person social connection has coincided with major increases in anxiety and depression, as well as political polarization and pessimism about the future, that kind of stuff. So we've already seen that a decline of in person connection has had great impacts on people's mental health on a larger scale. So I just really worry about the short term gains over what that is going to do in the long term about replacing that human to human connection. Um, Obviously, there are questions because I can see the benefit. I can see that AI form can make you feel or can has the potential to tackle loneliness in some regard, but it's just quite worrying where we deploy it and how we deploy it. Those are my concerns anyway, that it might lead us into almost a worse situation if we are replacing that human to human connection. That's
It's a
my
really
worry.
interesting point as well, because a lot of social, are we putting the trust of developing these tools, these chatbots, and these chatbots with the potential to end loneliness, as you know, Mark Zuckerberg and potentially others are pushing towards us? Are we putting a responsibility for their development in the hands of ultimately, well, putting it bluntly, the same people that developed the tools that were supposed to connect us, but ended up driving huge mental health problems across most of society at a young age? It feels counterintuitive that this wouldn't become something that's designed to just connect you and make you use these tools more than anything else.
There's a brilliant book by a woman called Kathy O'Neill called Weapons of Math Destruction, about the algorithms that get used in. It's actually written about social media, but like I think that a lot of it is applicable to the AI side of things as well, and that it is inherently impossible. People talk about like, well, the decision was made by a computer or an algorithm, and therefore it is much fairer than a human. But obviously, the algorithms are written by humans, and so there is inherent bias in them. And what I would worry about intensely, maybe not intent, I'm not going to sit there intensely worrying about what Mark Zuckerberg does, because A, it won't change anything, B, that would be a terrible use of my time. I have a
Why haven't
massive
you done
event to
anything
run in
today
30
yet,
days.
Henry? It's like you've been worrying about, intensely worrying about things.
Screaming, crying, throwing up, just thinking about Zuck. Yeah. Whilst I'm not going to sit there and intensely worry about it, I think it is terrifying to think that, as you say, these are platforms that have divided us, and that if I was to be super cynical, anyone who wants to ensure that AI becomes people's third friend, or a replacement for friendship, is probably in a position. If you're powerful enough to make that statement, you're in a position that you are powerful enough to ensure that that friend espouses certain views, narratives, ways of thinking that you want to share with the world. There's no way of us knowing that. At some point, there'll be some giant antitrust suit against one of the AI companies about how algorithms are built, and it will be in the news for 36 hours, and then they'll go, yeah. The fine is the cost of doing business in those cases. So that scares me, frankly. I thought I would ask ChatGPT if I asked it if I wanted more friends, should I just use you, or should I go out and try and meet people? And in credit to OpenAI, it said, if you want real friends, you need to go out and meet people. I can help you prepare, practice conversations, build confidence, but there's no substitute for real relations formed through shared experiences, mutual effort, and time. And kudos to OpenAI for that, because I think that that's potentially, if there are people out there who struggle to form friendships, and there definitely are, that is a very good use for AI. That's a very positive use for AI, but I find the idea of promoting it as a anti-loneliness tool inherently problematic.
Our final story comes to us from Healthtech Digital, and that is that only 30% of health and social providers are using AI, says a new survey, despite the fact that 76% think it would be useful. Now, I mean, before the podcast, we chatted briefly about this, Henry, didn't we? And you've got some doubts.
Firstly, this is there are some really interesting bits in this report. It is a very good bit of PR. SomX do amazing PR as well, but whoever has PR'd this into that headline, it's a masterpiece. So I saw it, and that headline didn't pass the sniff test for me. So over the summer, I did interviews with about, I think in the end, something like 60 or so CIOs, CCIOs from across Europe, in working in providers. And all of them are using AI in some capacity. Every single one. There wasn't anyone who was like, oh, no, we haven't got around to that yet. So I think that it is a great headline, but in what capacity are people not using AI? So I thought I'll download the report, I'll read it. Personal gripe, I have no issue with when you download a report them wanting your email and your name, but don't mandate me having my phone number. Like, that's just, what are you going to do? Call me? Please don't. Anyway, I gave them the phone number from Live and Kicking in the 90s. Yeah, 01818118181. Good luck ringing that. Zig and Zag are dead. So 30%, great headline figure. It's excellent PR. But then you dig into the data of this thing, right? So they surveyed 1,150, 1,200 people across 10 industries. So 120 in health. But what in health? They say providers, what type of providers, what size of providers, private, public, primary care, secondary care, pharmacy, like who were you talking to? At what roles? What org types, what roles? If you don't know who's surveyed and the methodology isn't published, then it's really hard to take a report headline figure like that seriously, because essentially they could have been absolutely anyone within healthcare. It was run by an agency, their surveys, and we have no idea who they're talking to. So they say only 30% of health and social care organisations currently use AI. And then later on it says, and I'll quote it exactly, 98% of IT/tech employees say their organisation is embracing AI in some way, though even the sector that scored lowest, health and social care, is still high at 88%. So 98% of the IT employees they surveyed said they were using AI. And even in healthcare, 88% of the IT employees, the people most likely to know, IT/tech employees, the people most likely to know whether AI is being deployed in their organisation, 88% of them said they were using it. So I could be completely wrong about this. Maths is not my strong suit. But I don't understand how 30% of healthcare organizations are using AI, but 88% of the people within those healthcare organizations who would know whether they're using AI say they're using AI. Like, what?
You got two options there, don't you? You've got 30% of organizations don't know they're using AI, which I think is possible. And then you've got 88% of people who are using AI and not telling their bosses.
And the other thing about this is when you say not using AI, like a tool, no one in your healthcare organization, and again, we don't know what the organizations are, but no one in that entire organization is using any AI for anything. I find that incredibly difficult to believe. In fact, I'm going to put it out, I don't believe that. Great headline though. Made me click twice, downloaded it. They've got all my details, not my phone number, but they've got the rest of my details. So it worked, but it doesn't pass the sniff test for me.
I think it's a great point, Henry. It raises questions around like PR and these kind of headlines and the kind of thorough, like, is this research? Where does it come from? And trying to break down that, because it's a pretty bold headline. It's a pretty bold stat. And it also kind of, I don't want to say perpetuates the narrative around social care, but you know, there's quite a lot of cool innovations happening there, and I think, it paints a different picture, and I'm sure it might actually probably make some people who work in health and social care who are using AI thinking, "Hang on a sec, we're using some pretty cool tech here." Not sure, but I couldn't answer whether this is accurate or not, and perhaps none of us can. Maybe we should try and find out.
I'd love to see the methodology. The reason I downloaded it was that the web page is beautifully formatted, interesting headline stats. But I downloaded the report to see if I could find the methodology and dig into it, because a huge part of my job is writing the agenda for Health Europe. Right? And so once that is written, we then send it out to a large group of people, all of whom are the leading experts in their fields. And that is the most terrifying day of the year is releasing that thing, because if there's anything in it that is wrong or factually inaccurate or doesn't pass the sniff test or has been based on a paper that is dubious, I find out really quickly.
Fantastic. So on the topics then of health and your upcoming agenda and everything you've got going, what do people need to see? How are you going to get the best out of the event? What should everyone head to first when they get there?
Registration. Pick up your badge. Prep, like just please prep. So every year,
I thought you said pret.
Pret. No. So if you when you arrive in Amsterdam, please go and get yourself a really mid Americano and a Camembert and pretend you're actually in Paris. Who would eat pret-a-manger in Paris? So how to make the most of health? It is not pret-a-manger. It's preparation a manger. Prep is so key. So every year, well, I say every year, it's year 2, right? But every year in the US events and for Europe, every single year, the day before, I'll get a message from someone that will be like, "Hey, about to fly. What shall I do, lol?" And I'll be like, "Oh." what do you want out of it? Like, look, we are completely cognizant that as an event that brings the most senior people in healthcare all into one room, like, it is not the world's cheapest event to attend. But that's because we're going for that senior leadership piece, so that you're meeting people who can change things and help you and progress and all the rest of it. So if you're spending money to go there and to try and get the most out of it, and then like 24 hours before, when I've like the team's been in Amsterdam for a few days already and everything's manic, and you haven't thought about it, you're not going to get the value out of it you should, right? So if you've spent the money, now is the time to start the prep. We're a month away. And the way that I look at this is that I would break it down to 3 steps. The first one is to say, what do I want out of this? So if you're a health tech company and you want to meet providers, how do I do that? What's the best way to do it? Who are my key target providers? How do I find out they're there? So you've got then your objectives, because you also want to say raise. So you're a health tech startup and you're looking at raising. Okay, so how do I join the Investor Connect program? What's the best way to get in front of those investors? So set out your actual targets for it. And then the website has got quite a lot of information on it. But go to the agenda section of the website, go to the Who Attends section of the website, look at your key audience under Who Attends, work out where you can meet them and how you can meet them. Top tip that everyone seems to ignore: if you go to a session that is if you're looking to meet healthcare providers and you go to a session that really appeals to healthcare providers, it's pretty likely the whole audience will be healthcare providers. Those are very good places to meet healthcare providers. I've now said healthcare providers more than is actually allowed. But go and find the content that you think not only appeals to you, but appeals to the people that you sell to if you're a health tech company. The next one is to go into the agenda and filter it by what you want to learn about. So if you are interested in learning about AI or interoperability or whatever it is, you can filter the whole agenda on the website by those things. You can filter it in the app as well, but do it on the website beforehand, prep, so that you've got those, put them into your calendar. That way you're not going to miss things. So start off by working out what you want out of the event, then go and like physically plan like your days. Like, there's a lot of stuff to see, there's a lot of stuff to do, and it's quite easy to get slightly overwhelmed by all of those things. There will always be 3 or 4 things happening at any one time, as well as the floor being open and everything else. And the third one is, any event that relies on serendipity is doing a disservice to its audience. But we've built Health Europe to feel like it is serendipitous connection, but it's not. It is really tailored. It's really engineered. Like, we want you to bump into the right people all of the time. Do the networking events. I can't stress this enough. People will often Monday, Wednesday nights, there are big parties. Thursday afternoon, there's the Survivors Barbecue. Do the events. There are so many people there, and it's a much more informal. It's not like Health Europe's a particularly formal feeling on the floor plan. Like, it's very bright and colourful, and a lot of business gets done, but it doesn't feel like a sort of dull grey room. But do the networking.
I'm not going
events.
until you put Petunia in a suit.
I mean, I prance around in a pink suit. Is that not good enough for you?
There we go.
So yeah, work out what you want from it. Plan your days and do both the more formal side of it and the informal side of it. That's it. Those are the 3 key things.
Fantastic. I mean, it sounds like it's going to be a really exciting time. What's the 3 sessions you're going to be attending?
I managed to see 11 minutes of one session last year, so I don't know. The ones that I really like, okay, and this is always really awkward because I write them, so I'm basically reviewing my own homework here. Lena comes up with the concepts, and then I write the long form ones. There's a session called "Don't Die," which is about longevity pioneers, and being on the edge of eternity and things like that, or eternal life. That I will hope to get to. So that's got some really excellent folk talking on it, including Alyssa Jaffe from 7 Wire Ventures. There is a piece on wearables, which I'm very excited for, mainly because the pun headline "Data and Gabbana" is the best thing I wrote last year. But that's actually got an amazing panel on it as well, so I'm excited for that. And then the provider stage. So new stage for this year, we've got a provider stage with I think 30 or so C-suite provider leaders presenting innovations that they've done in their trust. We've never done presentations at Europe before. Everything's always been panels, and this year we have switched that so that these 30, 40 C-suite people are going to get up 8 minutes each and say, this is an innovation that we've created in wherever it is, Erasmus UMC or Guys and St Thomas or APHP. I'm really excited for that. It is new. We don't know if it will work. I think it will. I think it's going to be amazing, because there's nothing more powerful as a health tech company than one of the senior leaders in a large organization that you work with standing up and going, this stuff works, and I'm willing to put my own face in front of it. So that's a really exciting opportunity that I'm excited for. And a bit of a cop-out, because there's like 30 sessions there, so I've just recommended them all.
Well, there you go. If you're going to Health Europe, attend everything, is what Henry says.
Anything more than 11 minutes is probably good.
Yeah. I think the other one that I read, there is one. I mean, there are. Sorry, my phone is going off. That's always good. There's a really good session for health tech companies, just with a ridiculously good panel, which is about pitch deck building, which is called Pimp My Slides. And Huw, who we all know, Huw Rai, is the moderator on that. But you've got Dow Jips, who's the co-founder of Healthy Capital, Hans Klopper, the CEO of Hello Better, Rishi Dasgupta from Health Innovation South London, and Vandana from Antler. There's a really good panel of people to talk about both how you build it and how you present it, but also how it's received from like the provider side of things. So yeah, that should be a really good session. I think that's 9 a.m. on the Wednesday, so don't go too big on the Tuesday.
I know everyone will appreciate how you dived into early 2000s MTV culture for the naming of that.
I think when we look at our average audience member, I should actually just write the entire agenda as though I'm Paris Hilton. And maybe I will. Maybe I will.
Secrets for next year's health.
Can you imagine how poorly received that would be?
Amy, did you want to jump in there? Sorry.
No, I was just saying maybe she'll be your special guest for next year. I know you're struggling
Hilton.
to get an artist that crosses over the different nationalities. She could be that in between, you know. She's neither comedian nor artist nor musician, but she's something that everybody knows and feels familiar with.
I bet you she's had a health tech startup at some point. I guarantee it.
Henry's just playing coy because the team have actually told him that Paris Hilton is this year's special guest.
I couldn't possibly comment. Somewhere in Cyprus, our marketing manager's ears are burning, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Well, hey, if you need a comedian for next year, I can put in a good word with Bill Bailey shortly at lunch. So,
I honestly would love that. I love that man. I would love that so much. I'm not sure how we would wrangle the healthcare angle with it, but we can work it out.
I'll ask.
How did you make it with the Libertines last year? What was the convincing bit there?
We paid them. They're really nice guys, actually. Anyway, I think this year it will be a very big party. I'm just not allowed to know anything.
So you were the perfect person to come on and talk about it.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Informed from within the organisation, and you got me. I'm apologetic, but there we are.
No worries. We've really enjoyed it. Henry, thanks so much for jumping on and chatting to us. Health Europe is 16th to 19th of June in Amsterdam. It sounds like it's going to be a real party. Really excited for it. Thanks, Amy, for joining for today's episode as well. You can catch all of the stories that we've talked about in this week's newsletter, as well as some of the best pods, jobs, and events other than health as well. Well, as well as health. You know what I mean. We'll see you next week. Thanks for listening. Bye.